Welcome to the final medicine revision video that's going to talk through some of the key developments and ideas of the modern part of the course. So modern medicine is looking at from 1900 until the present day. And I think it's really worth noting that the present day it keeps on going. So anything that has happened in the last few years, particularly the COVID pandemic, are all valid to this course as well. Just to give it a little bit of context first, this is a period that you are living in as well, so always relying on your own experiences as well are always going to be really significant to get an understanding for this part of the course as well. The two big things here, as we said, there was major change in the industrial era. The continued government intervention is going to be increased. It's probably going to peak, actually, the amount of government intervention. Obviously, looking at the advertisement here for the new National Health Service in 1948, 5th of July 1948. So we're going to see free healthcare for the masses in Britain. 93% of the adult population are going to sign up for that NHS in its very first week, showing you that kind of impact that it had. Also, we're going to see the huge use of technology. Technology is going to play a massive role in how medicine is going to change in this period as well. We're going to see rapid progress during this time period here. So to start off, again, I'm going to kind of talk through this chronologically. And the first major development during this time period is that of magic bullets. So as we know, technology is going to play a huge part, and chemicals had already started to play a role in understanding medicine in the 19th century, and it's no different in the early 20th century as well. There is a scientist called Paul Ehrlich who was in Robert Koch's research team. So he had a history of understanding bacteria and killing bacteria. And Ehrlich is fascinated by antibodies, the way in which the human body creates antibodies to defend the body from foreign viruses attacking the body as well. He wants to create a chemical compound that could kill specific bacteria. Now, in 1906, the bacteria that caused syphilis, so a sexually transmitted disease that could lead to blindness, heart failure, and even insanity, so going insane, is discovered. 1 in 5 people from the disease would recover, so syphilis was a major problem. Ehrlich wants to find a chemical compound that could deal with syphilis as well. So they start to experiment with lots of chemical compounds, but it's mainly based on arsenic. And this is why magic bullets are not that effective, because arsenic, as you will know, is extremely toxic and really harmful. And a lot of the magic bullets could lead to major side effects like cancer and abdominal pain and kidney failure as well. But it's a Japanese scientist in the team called Dr. Hata who is able to find the chemical that would work, and it happens to be called salvicin. So salvicin 606 is what they call it, number 606, and it's found to be the first ever chemical ever to be able to kill a particular microbe as well. By 1910, so Hata makes the discovery in 1909. A year later, 10,000 people had been treated for syphilis through this as well. But like we said, needed painful injections, and it could cause major problems as well. The only problem with salvicin, though, is that it could only kill the bacteria for syphilis. So that's where its impact is limited. Now, it's not until 1932, so quite some time later, that the second magic bullet is found, and that is through a German scientist called Gerhard Domagk, who happens to be experimenting with a red dye called Penicillin, and he found that killed bacterial infections in mice. His daughter, in 1935, contracted blood poisoning, and Domagk panics, as any father would, and he decides to use Penicillin on his daughter. And it so happens that Penicillin is the chemical that could kill the bacteria that caused the blood poisoning as well. So she recovered, and that was the discovery of the second magic bullet. Now, the ingredient in Penicillin, the active ingredient that actually meant that it could kill the bacteria, was sulfonamide. And what we start to see, especially when we get the electron microscope, which has an impact later on with DNA, we start to see different companies starting to find different sulfonamides. And they start to find magic bullets for meningitis and pneumonia as well. Winston Churchill is given a sulfonamide, but again, they were ineffective against really strong microbes, and they could have quite serious side effects as well. The drug that will be able to kill more specific, stronger, not specific, sorry, but stronger bacteria and all bacteria is penicillin. The story of penicillin comes in two. We know that we have the discovery by Alexander Fleming. It's by complete chance. He finds, he is a bacteriologist. He is experimenting with different bacteria and trying to find ways in which to kill bacteria. He leaves a plate out. He leaves the window open. He famously leaves. He comes back, looks under the microscope, and he finds that the bacteria on the plate that he was experimenting with, something has killed it. And when he uses the microscope, he finds that it is a mold, which is the Penicillium notatum. He calls it penicillin. And what he's found is a mold-killing juice, something that could kill bacteria. Now, he starts to experiment more with it as well. He carries out a few experiments. He carries out experiments on some rabbits to prove that it didn't harm the body, and it doesn't. He's able to use it on one of the other scientists who had conjunctivitis and an eye infection, and the penicillin did start to actually kill the infection, but they didn't have enough, and that's the problem. Fleming struggled to get any funding, and he writes up his findings in 1929, and he shelves them, really. It's not until later on in the 1930s, late 1930s, that two scientists from Oxford University, in Florey and Chain, are the really people who make this into a mass-produced drug. They attempt to get funding from the British government to begin with. The British government only offer £25 because the Second World War was looming. This is in 1939. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to produce as much penicillin as they can. It was 2,000 litres to treat one infection. They're using milk bottles, bathtubs, and they just can't produce enough. They go to the United States in the summer of 1941. They request funding. They're rejected. And it's not until in December of 1941 that the Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor, destroy the American Navy, American fleet, and then the Americans join the Second World War. They then offer drug companies $80 million to start the production of a mass-produced penicillin drug as well. From that, we see huge fermentation tanks are built, and we see a huge, we see the mass production of penicillin, and hundreds of thousands of people, millions probably, are treated through penicillin. This is the very first antibiotic, and again, a huge turning point in treating infection and bacteria as well. So we get the development of the National Health Service then, and then we're seeing this idea of high-tech surgery develop as well. So we've already kind of talked about the development of the NHS, this free healthcare for all. So for the first time, people of all incomes were able to actually get fully funded, correct care as well. And then as the century wore on, we see high-tech surgery being developed. We already mentioned the electron microscope. It could zoom in up to 10 million times, and this is also where we see the discovery of the double helix and DNA. So Francis Crick and James Watson at the University of Cambridge are working with cells, and it's when they come across the double helix. It's Rosalind Franklin is an expert in X-ray photography, again using surgery, and she's able to actually take a photograph of the double helix as well. It's through their work they're able to identify that DNA is not just that disease is not just caused by bacteria; it is also caused by genetics as well. And by the 1970s, They're starting to find diseases that are caused by genetics, things like Alzheimer's and diabetes as well. So this is a huge moment. Later on in 1986, the Human Genome Project would take place. So major countries in the world would gather together to map out the cells and the information of each cell of one human body. The stat we gave you was that one human body cell, the information contained within that, could fill 80,000 textbooks. That's how much we're talking. So technology has played a huge part in storing that information and obviously discovering the information in the first place with the electron microscope and then X-ray photography as well. But through the development of the NHS for other people as well, we've seen rapid change in diagnosis because we've seen technological developments through diagnosis. So whilst we still have some of the fundamentals like observation, doctor's notes, like it has been since the time of Hippocrates, we're starting to see much more technological ways of diagnosing disease. So things like blood tests, things like MRI scans, CT scans, ultrasound, heart pacemakers. These are all hugely significant developments, which mean that diseases can be diagnosed quickly and more accurately as well. But we also see high-tech surgery in treatments as well. So plastic surgery has obviously come a huge long way as well. The use of dialysis machines to help those with kidney failure, keyhole and microsurgery, so the small, being able to actually operate inside the body, in really intricate ways, using endoscopes as well to identify the little camera that goes down as well. Transplant surgery. So 1954, the very first internal transplant was made with a kidney. 1967, the very first heart transplant in the world, and we've seen that develop even further as well. Blood transfusions, robotics, and then obviously with cancer, radiotherapy and chemotherapy as well. These are all available on the National Health Service, so it's the government and the technological developments which means that rapid progress has been made. We said at the start of the video that not only technology but increased government intervention, obviously with the development of the National Health Service, has played a huge part in having a huge impact. And we think about the Simples criteria, public benefit, made people healthy. This is where the government comes into play here as well. We've seen a series of government campaigns to improve lifestyle choices. So we've seen obviously the government in recent times trying to tackle obesity, the emphasis on healthy eating, 5 a day, have 5 fruit and veg a day every single day. We've also seen campaigns to try and warn about the dangers of drugs, alcohol, excessive smoking. 2006, the government at the time very controversially passes a law which bans smoking in public places, so in pubs, restaurants. We've seen that be then increased to bus shelters, to smoking in the car with a person under 18. We've seen the government try to prevent new smokers. We've seen higher taxes on cigarettes and tobacco products. We've seen the dangers of smoking. We've seen the dangers of smoking clearly shown on cigarette packets, and shops not being able to actually show cigarettes as well. Also, campaigns like Stoptober, Dry January, these are all different things. Sugar Smart, Change for Life, these are all kind of government initiatives as well that we've seen. So we see campaigns, but we also see laws being passed to try and improve public health. Mass vaccinations as well. Again, COVID, if any of you had the COVID vaccination, that's a huge thing to talk about. But in the 1940s and 50s, government vaccinations were introduced for diphtheria, polio, measles, rubella, and obviously COVID in recent times as well. We've seen that mass vaccination campaigns, making sure that people are healthy and preventing disease. The last kind of key thing to talk about regarding the modern day is the fight against lung cancer as well. We've kind of already made some reference to some of the things that have been put in place here as well. It's the second killer, lung cancer. It mainly hits people in the over 60s bracket because these are very much the generation that where smoking was more common, more so than in younger generations. Breast cancer is currently the highest one as well, and there is a huge fight through the National Health Service against lung cancer as well. But it's not just caused by people who smoke, pollution as well, and passive smoking as well, so second-hand smokers as well. Diagnosing lung cancer is difficult. You have to do it very quickly. CT scans can diagnose if done early, but also PET CT scans as well, which injects radioactive material to see if it can locate the cancer as well. But looking for symptoms as well, like those shown on the slide here, are really important to pick up the signs of lung cancer really, really early. And I guess using the idea of genetics, not lung cancer, but you might remember that Angelina Jolie, there was a high chance that she would contract breast cancer because her mother did. It turned out that there was a high percentage. She ends up having one of the breasts removed, and she does not contract cancer. So surgery is a method to treat cancer, and lung cancer in particular, but you can live with one lung, but again, it means you're impaired. And it's all about catching the cancer early. If it spreads too quickly, removal of one lung is simply not an option. And also, it's also relying on transplants. And there's an ethical question to be had here. Should someone who has smoked and damaged their own lung then be given a brand new one as well? So there's lots of ethical questions there as well. Other treatments involve chemotherapy, but chemo is, it's tough. It kills all of the cells in your body, meaning that, that's why you lose your hair. You're really weak. It's in its attempts to kill the cancerous cell, and radiotherapy as well. But obviously, using radioactivity has dangerous side effects too. Prevention of lung cancer, we've already kind of talked about quite a lot, and the government have really stepped up in methods of trying to stop people becoming smokers, and we've already discussed a lot of those campaigns there as well. So to summarise the modern day, it really is a period of rapid progress because of the increased intervention of governments, free healthcare, the huge wide-ranging impact that the National Health Service has had, the ability to access all of those services, and the technological revolution that also took place at the same time, meaning that high-tech surgery and high-tech diagnosis can mean that disease is dealt with and illness is dealt with really quickly. But also that hugely significant point that genetics and DNA have also changed the way in which we think about disease. It's not just bad bacteria and viruses. Genetics also play a key role as well.